Good morning. Hey, I want to make sure you all know, if you signed up for Thursday night, make sure you're here a little bit before 6. We're going to get started right at 6. Friday night is our Good Friday service. Make sure you make plans. We have an incredible night planned for you on Friday as well. Next Sunday, Easter Sunday, if any of you 11 a.m. folks can come to 9 a.m., that is going to help free up space for our guest next week. That will be fantastic, but if not, we'll see you next week at 9 and 11 for Easter Sunday. How many of you, I just want to make sure that we're all in the know, how many of you all know the name Michael Jordan? Okay, good. And I'm not, for y'all young people, I'm not talking about Michael B. Jordan from Avengers and all that. I'm talking about the real Michael Jordan. Now, how ridiculous would it be if someone were trying to explain to you who Michael Jordan was and they said, you know, Michael Jordan, the guy from Space Jam. Or like, well, oh, no, Michael Jordan, the guy that's got all the shoes that Pastor likes, right? Or Michael Jordan, I think he was a baseball player. Played a little baseball. Oh, no. He's the part owner of the Charlotte Bobcats or Hornets or whatever they are now. It would be crazy to explain to someone who Michael Jordan was by all of those things, right? Because if we're going to talk about Michael Jordan, we need to talk about the 5-time NBA MVP, 6-time world champion and finals MVP, defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, the GOAT, right? The absolute, no doubt about it, greatest basketball player to ever have his foot touch the court. To talk about Michael Jordan as the guy from Space Jam is ridiculous, right? Now, I'm not saying that he's in Space Jam, but that ain't what we know him for. Because if there was no Space Jam, there would still be an MJ. It's not what we know him for. See, here in this series, we've been asking ourselves, do we have the right guy when we're talking about Jesus? Because the same thing that I just said about Michael Jordan, that if we went, oh, yeah, MJ from Space Jam, this is what happens to Jesus a lot. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, he's that good moral teacher. Oh, Jesus, yeah, I know him, he's the miracle worker. Oh, Jesus, no, I know that guy, he's the friend of sinners. All these things true, but this is not the thing that we should associate first and foremost with Jesus. In fact, the thing about Jesus that we have to get is the number one thing about him is exactly what we're celebrating as a church today. Today is called Palm Sunday. It's the day that the church every year commemorates when Jesus got on a donkey and rode into Jerusalem. When he did that, he was fulfilling prophecy that told Israel one day, your king, the Messiah, will come to you riding on a donkey that's never been ridden before, riding in. He was telling everyone in that moment when he sat on that donkey and walked in, I am not just a moral teacher. I'm not just some moral example. I'm not just some guy that feeds the hungry. I'm not just some miracle worker. If you want to know what Jesus is, first and foremost, when he sat on that donkey and rode into town, he was telling everyone, the king is coming to town. The king has now arrived. Just like MJ ain't just a dude from Space Jam, Jesus is not just some moral teacher. He is the king. He's the king. This is huge. Even all the crowds on Palm Sunday. Look at Matthew 21, beginning in verse 8. All the crowds. It says most of the crowd spread their garments on the road ahead of him, and others cut branches. They had these palm branches. They spread them on the road, and some of them would wave them. Keep on going, verse 9. Jesus was in the center of the procession, and the people all around him were shouting this, praise God for the Son of David. See, the Son of David, this is a kingly line. David was the king, and God told him that there would always be someone sitting on the throne from his line. So when they said, Praise God, here comes the Son of David. They're saying, this is our king. Not only did Jesus say he was the king, the crowd said he was the king. Look at the other depictions of this. Mark chapter 11. Mark chapter 11 tells us this. Jesus was in the center of the procession. Here's what they said. Praise God, blessings on him who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessings on the coming kingdom of our ancestor David. See, only kings have kingdoms. Look at Luke's version of this. Luke's version of this says this, the next day, or there it is, blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven. John tells us this, that the people were shouting, he's king, he's king, he's king. Over and over and over. Not only did Jesus fulfill prophecy and tell everyone he's the king, the crowd said he was the king. So when you think Jesus, please don't make the mistake to go, oh, Jesus, the moral teacher. Jesus, the miracle worker. No. Jesus, the friend of sinners. Yes, he's all of these things. But if you want to know what the scriptures say he is, first and foremost, that is, he is the king. This is why this is so significant. See, if to you, Jesus is just a moral teacher, it will be very easy for you to just set him to the side. And when he has something useful to say, well, then I go to Jesus. But at the moment that I don't like what Jesus says, I will just go away from it. This is what happens when Jesus is moral teacher rather than king. Because if the king says it, it don't really matter your opinion on it. That's the difference between a teacher and a king. Oh, the other thing, see, teachers and miracle workers, they are not worthy of praise. But a king is worthy of praise. Like, you can't orient your life around a miracle worker. You just can't. So if Jesus for you is miracle worker, he will show up when you need him to show up, but you will neglect him anytime everything's going good. This is not the way that we can treat a king. This is why if you got the wrong guy, if you got the Jesus friend of sinners, he'll make you feel good when you've been bad. But you need the king version that will also hold you accountable. If you have him as anything other than king, you've got the wrong guy. This is what the crowds were saying on that day. I want to show this to you in a really, like, this is something God showed me. I was doing the journey through Luke that we all did to start the year. We got to towards the end of that, and God showed me something as we were reading one morning. I said, oh man, we've got to dive further into this. So I want to talk to you. There was a guy there that day with the crowds, with the procession of Jesus walking through. When Jesus was claiming to be king and the crowd was saying that he was king, there was a guy there. And we first get introduced to this guy in Matthew chapter 10. When Jesus is sending his disciples out, it says this in 10:1. It says, Jesus called his 12 disciples together and gave them authority to cast out evil spirits and heal every kind of disease and illness. These people were getting sent out in the name of Jesus to go and do ministry. And it tells us this, verse 2. Here are the names of them. First Simon, also called Peter, then Andrew, Peter's brother, then James, son of Zebedee, John, Philip, Matthew, James, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and then finally Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. So we get introduced to the first time this guy named Judas Iscariot, that Matthew wants to make sure that you know he was the one. He's the one that betrayed Jesus. Now, this is amazing to me. Judas has a front and center seat to everything Jesus said and did. He has unfettered access to the king. He saw the miracles. He saw him walk on water. He heard the sermons. And yet, what we're going to see is there's something a little off with this guy. Something a little off with this guy. But he was in a small group, right? He served the Lord. He got sent out to do ministry. And yet, there's something wrong with this guy. See, in John chapter 12, about the same time, Jesus is in the house of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And Mary comes and pours an expensive bottle of perfume on Jesus' feet. Go to verse 3. Then Mary took out a 12-ounce jar of expensive perfume and made from the essence of nard. She anointed Jesus' feet with it, wiping his feet with her hair. The house was filled with fragrance. She is anointing his feet with this expensive oil. Verse 4 tells us this, that Judas, the disciple who would soon betray him, said, that perfume was worth a year's wages. It should have been sold and the money given to the poor. Now, if you just pause there, you'd go, oh, Judas, how upstanding of you. You're concerned with the poor? You ever meet those people? I mean, if you're around church long enough, you'll meet some Judases. Some people that say the right stuff, but then you're like, you get a little bit further into the journey and you go, oh, okay, never mind. Never mind, because the next thing that we find out is that he didn't actually care for the poor. Judas was a thief. And since he was in charge of the disciples' money, he often stole some for himself. Please get this picture that is being painted, because I am convinced that the church of today is filled with Judas. See, they have access to Jesus. They're around Jesus. They're in a little small group. They serve Jesus. And yet, something else is actually king in their life. And you see it show up whenever following Jesus comes in conflict with that other king. Right? Whenever following Jesus no longer lines up with what actually I want to do in my life, all of a sudden I will put Jesus to the side and follow my own hopes and dreams, my own way, the things that I want. And unfortunately, that's not an option if he's king. Oh, if he's a good moral teacher, you can set him to the side whenever he disagrees with you. If he's just a miracle worker, you can put him up on the shelf until you need him. But if he's the king, unfortunately, that's not an option. See, for Judas, there was something else that actually had his heart, even though on the outside he looked like your average churchgoer. Something else had his heart. John's going, hey, y'all got to know about this guy. When he goes on to betray Jesus, that's not the first time that he was acting up. Something else had his heart the whole time. I'm going to tell you, there's so many people. This is such a devious scheme of your spiritual enemy to let you think that you can follow Jesus part-time while something else has your heart. I'm telling you right, oh, you're in a relationship right now that does not honor God. You go, yeah, but we're going to make it right eventually. We're going to make it, no. See, if you don't have a desire to please God right now, something else has your heart. Oh, no, we're going to get it together. No, listen. Right? Hey, when we are financially free, we're going to be generous. No. You get generous, then you get financially free. If you're waiting for the day to be obedient, something else has your heart. And you're just trying to do a little Judas reasoning as to what has your heart. Might be your job, might be your kids, might be your own pleasure, your own possessions. Something else has your heart if you can kind of reason with yourself about your own season of disobedience. Something else has captured your heart. Because the next time we see Judas pop up, it's in Matthew 26. It says this, then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priest and asked, how much will you pay me to betray Jesus to you? And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. And from that time on, Judas began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus. Judas, this guy that he heard all the sermons, he watched online. He didn't miss a Sunday. He's there more than you're here. He had unbelievable access to Jesus. He had the best teacher. He was in the small group. He served the Lord. And yet, something else had his heart. Something else had captured him. And he had enough of Jesus to make him feel like it was okay. But Jesus wasn't king in his life. Money was clearly king. What is it that's in that role for you? He's going to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver? That's a different king. The next time we see Judas pop up is in the upper room at the Last Supper on that Thursday night of right before Jesus is going to be arrested. In the upper room. Here's what's amazing. All along, Jesus already knew Judas is the one that would betray him. And yet, kept letting him show up. And here's the amazing thing. Jesus knew the condition of Judas's heart, but the other 11 didn't. That's why you can fool everyone in your small group. You can fool everyone you're sitting in seats with right now about the condition of your heart, but you will never fool Jesus. And he invites them to this dinner. They're having the Passover just like we're going to have on Thursday night here. And Jesus has the audacity. He says, one of you is going to betray me. It's amazing. If you're reading that passage in Matthew, it says that the disciples looked at him and said, "Is it I, Lord? Lord?" Lord, that's the Greek word kyrios. That means Lord, Master, the one that's in charge. That means King. That's what the disciples are all going around. Is it me, Lord? Is it me, Lord? Is it me, Lord? And then Matthew makes sure that he points out that when Judas asked the question, Judas says, "Rabbi, is it me?" Rabbi meaning teacher. Not Lord, not the one that's in charge, not the one that's captured my heart, just the one that, man, I really like them sermons. Set them to the side because, see, Judas in his mind is going, he's a teacher. He's a teacher. How much trouble could a teacher really get into if I betray him? They're not going to do nothing to him. He hasn't done anything. This is a quick get-rich scheme for Judas. Jesus will be all right. Here's why. He thinks he's betraying a teacher. Shouldn't be no consequences for that. He did not know that he was betraying a king. And when there's a king set up against the other king, all of a sudden it's going to go a lot further than what he thought it was going to go. That's the problem Judas is faced with. He doesn't know, he doesn't really understand who Jesus is. That's the difference. If Jesus is just a good teacher in your life, he's not Lord, you'll be okay with compromising your faith, just like Judas did. Just like Judas. See, teachers don't get the top spot in your life. Kings do. Those that are worthy of worship do. If Jesus is just your friend, come on. Ain't no friend get the top spot in your life. You're not going to change who you are for a friend. But if he's a king, well, that changes everything. That means that you can't actually just follow him casually. Whenever you can't just do your faith in your spare time. It means everything else in your life bows down to him. This is the problem that Judas is having. And here's the devious scheme. This is what I saw when we were doing the journey through Luke, as I was reading this part in the Gospel of Luke. I wrote down on a little notepad, I said, Judas didn't hate Jesus. Judas wasn't even antagonistic towards him. See, I think that some of you all, some of us, some people in the church today think that you're on good terms with Jesus simply because you're not antagonistic towards him like those people outside the church are. Just because you're not saying awful things about him. Just because he has a little bit of you, but he doesn't have all of you. And so I think because we're not antagonistic towards him, we go, yeah, that's fine. Judas wasn't antagonistic towards Jesus. He did not hate him. We talked about this last week. The reason why a lot of the disciples were in the situation they were in is because they thought Jesus was coming to be an earthly king that would overthrow Rome, and then they would get all the power and the prestige and the fame that goes with it. Judas, being a man who clearly his heart is captured by money and power, definitely is in it for that reason right there. So he's thinking, I will betray Jesus, maybe make a little money on the side. It's not going to get too far. Or he thinks, I'll get them to go and start the revolution on our behalf. Because Judas, there's some scholars who think that Judas might have belonged to a group of people called the Sicarii, which were revolutionaries that were waiting on Israel to rise up and to go after the Romans. So maybe Judas thinks, well, I'll just go ahead and get the ball rolling for you, Jesus, since you've been taking way too much time to get this revolution started. I'll have them come after you, then you'll be forced to act. Judas never thinks it's going to get this far, mainly because he does not understand who Jesus really is. He's got him pegged for the wrong guy. And you see right after that supper, Jesus and his disciples go out to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Judas comes with the Roman guards, kisses Jesus on the cheek, calls him Rabbi once again, not Lord, Rabbi once again. They arrest him and they take him off. And after he's arrested, it becomes very clear to Judas that this plan is going horribly. We thought he was just going to get a slap on the wrist, but they just sentenced him to death. They just sentenced him to death. This has gone way farther than Judas ever thought it was going to go. Matthew chapter 27. This is the reason why I'll tell you I don't think Judas hated Jesus. He just had bad priorities. Look at Matthew 27. It says, very early in the morning, the leading priests and the elders of the people met again to lay plans for putting Jesus to death. Then they bound him, led him away, and took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas had betrayed him and realized that Jesus had been condemned to die, he was filled with remorse. This is why I'm telling you, Judas did not hate Jesus. He had affinity for Jesus. He just didn't have Jesus in the right place. He just had the wrong guy in the wrong place. He feels remorse, so he takes the 30 pieces of silver back to the leading priests and the elders. He says, I have sinned, for I have betrayed innocent man. And they respond, what do we care? That's your problem. And we know that Judas takes that money and he throws it back. Can I just tell you, whatever it is that you are putting in front of Jesus in your life will never, ever do for you what you think it's going to do. Money has now so corrupted Judas that he takes it and he throws it. Whatever it is that you're compromising with, whatever it is that you're putting in front of your relationship with Jesus will ultimately come back to get you. Because then in verse 5 it says this, Judas threw the silver coins in the temple and went out and hanged himself. This is not the actions of a man who hated Jesus. It's the actions of a man who had enough affinity for Jesus that thought he could get away with compromise. And when he realized he was on the road to destruction the whole time, he could not take it, and he ended it all. I am worried that in the modern American church, so many people have a wee tiny bit of Jesus, enough to sleep good at night, but are on the path to destruction. Because he's nothing more than a moral teacher or a miracle worker. He's something on the side. You have not made him the central focus of your life, and if that is you, you are on the path to destruction. You have let your work, you have let your money, you have let your possessions, your kids, your grandkids, your activities, your trips, everything else has taken the place of Jesus in your life, and you are on the path to destruction. Judas didn't hate Jesus. He just had him in the wrong place. I'm going to make a confession. I was in the chess club in middle school. And I understand that you're as shocked as I was. But, all right, another confession. I joined because the kids that were in the chess club didn't think that a kid that played sports could come in and whip their butt in chess, and I did. And I loved it. So I go in there, they'd be like, but you play sports, you can't be good at this. I am good at this. And I will stay after school for an hour with kids I don't even like just to beat you at something. I'm that competitive. I loved it. So being a cocky middle schooler, my uncle comes in one time and he finds out that I'm getting into chess. I'm like, oh, well, bring it on then. You're old, I'm young, I'm ready to go. Let's go, bring it on. I did not know that he was a fantastic chess player. And we started playing, and what I thought I knew about chess, I didn't know that much about chess. It was good enough to beat the kids after school, but there's this move that he taught me, and he did this to me over and over and over until I literally almost threw the board over and tried to fight my uncle. I was so mad, because if you don't know anything about chess, there's a move in chess. It's a 4-move checkmate called the scholar's mate. What you do is, let's say I'm going to start off first. I'm going to go there. I'm going to move my king pawn up 2. Well, let's say that they counter with this. Okay, well then I'm going to move my queen here. Let's say that they want to do this. All right, I'm going to move my bishop here. They're going to make another move. Maybe they do this. I don't know why they would, but maybe they do. And then my next move is this. Checkmate. 4 moves. Checkmate. All right. 2 years ago, we'll get back to that in a second. 2 years ago, I was in Ecuador. I was shopping for my kids. I didn't know what to get at Landon. Olivia is very easy. When you're on trips, she loves everything. Like you go into one of those gift stores, that's what her bedroom looks like. You just go and pick, and she will love it. Landon is much more difficult. I could not figure out what to get him, but he was in 3rd grade, and I was like, oh, maybe he's old enough to start learning chess. And they had these hand-carved chess sets in these little stores in Ecuador. So, all right, cool. It was small enough, it would fit in my bag, so I got this thing. We don't play with it anymore because the way that they carve we can't tell the difference of the pieces. But I was showing him how to play. But what I wanted to do was I wanted him to learn the scholar's mate just like my uncle taught me, so the way it wouldn't happen to him. So I hadn't played chess, though, in like 20 plus years at this point. So we get that first chessboard home. This is the chessboard that he's now like graduated up to. So we get home to play this first game of chess. And I'm trying to remember even how to set the board up. Like, I know where all the main pieces go, but I did not remember where the king and the queen went. I couldn't remember if the king was on my left or the right. And for some reason, I didn't Google it. I just guessed. And on that first game, I had it in this order right here. I had the king in this position. I had the queen in this position. And my plan is I'm going to get this kid with the scholar's mate. He's going to get mad because he has a temper and is competitive like me. He's going to learn a lesson. It's going to be great. I moved this and then this, and then this, and all of a sudden I realize, well, this move is not going to work because that is not the king, that's the queen. And here's what I learned, that when the king is in the wrong position, it doesn't work. This is what some of y'all are going to have to learn the hard way in life, that when the king is in the wrong position, it doesn't work. Your marriage ain't going to work, your finances ain't going to work, your parenting ain't going to work, your job's not going to work, you ain't going to work until the king is in the right position. As long as you continue to set him off to the side, as long as he is not number one where the king should be, as long as the king is in the wrong position, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You can keep trying. You could try to play that move right there as many times as you want, but if the king is not in its proper position, it will never work. And this is what too many people are trying to do. They are trying to have just a tiny bit of Jesus. Jesus on the side. But not the central focus of your life. But the king has to be the thing that everything else bows to. The king cannot come second. He doesn't ride in the back seat. You cannot pursue your vision for your life and God's vision for your life simultaneously. It has to be the king first. All these other things that you're trying to squeeze into your life, they're not bad things. Maybe some of them are, but a lot of them are good things. But they are secondary things to the king. If the king's not in his proper place, I promise you it will not work. So today, I'm going to ask you one final time, do you have the right guy? And if you do you have him in the right place in your life? Do you have the king in the proper place? Is your faith something that you do in your free time? Or is King Jesus the reason why you wake up in the morning? More than anything else, is that what your heart beats for? We have members of a prayer team and any elders that want to come forward to be up here. If you need prayer, we'll have people up front. You can come and pray with them any Sunday. There's going to be people up here for you to pray with. We also have a prayer room in the back. You're welcome to go back there and pray during any response time. Our altars are available. You can turn your seat into an altar. If you're online, you can send us a message. But would you take this next 3 to 5 minutes and ask God if you've got the right guy and do you have him in the right place? Is there anything that you're putting in front of God? Is there anything that you're putting in front of King Jesus that today you need to put back in its proper place and put the king where he belongs?